Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody who is watching the stream live. I've got Jeremy Kauffman here. Jeremy, I'm not sure I know everything about you, so if you want to introduce yourself, I think that'll be better than me introducing you.
Sure. Well, I mean, who knows everything about themselves even, the amount of memories I've lost.
Fair.
But I'm Jeremy Kauffman. I mean, I wear a bunch of hats actually. So I suppose I don't know what you want to talk about in the interview, but I'm the CEO of LBRY, which is the parent company of Odysee.com, which is used by tens of millions of people, probably like 40 million people last month, to watch and share videos online. LBRY is a Web3 technology that does to publishing what Bitcoin does to money, really lets people take back control. I am personally, not as part of my work, I'm personally pretty active as a libertarian here in the state of New Hampshire, very involved with the Free State Project on the board of directors and help run the organization too. And yeah, do lots of other things too. So, what do you want to talk about today?
So I'm going to jump around a lot.
Okay.
I'm going to jump around a lot. So the first thing that I actually wanted to talk about was, I guess, New Hampshire and Manchester in particular. You live in Manchester, right?
That's right. The big city.
Yeah, the biggest city in New Hampshire. So where I live, I'm in Northern Illinois right now. There's been big pushes for, I want to keep this video monetized, so medicine passports. So I was wondering what the climate is in Manchester. I'm wondering if it's because of the Bostonians moving in, if it's getting worse. And if it's not getting worse, is it getting demonstrably better?
So I think it's absolutely getting better in terms of certain types of passports. By the way, it's so funny that you have to avoid these words. You can't say the I word.
The video will go up on Odysee.
Yeah. So I think it's quite a sign of our modern times that like there are words you can't say, or you can't, you're not allowed to communicate. But to answer the core of your question, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I had this happen to me earlier today for the first time, and I wasn't able to fix it. But it seems to be like there's something broken, and it's the focusing. It keeps jumping, so I'm really sorry about that.
Dude, look at the state of my studio.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
To answer the heart of your question, so passports are banned in New Hampshire by the New Hampshire government. The ban here is not a ban on private property owners from doing that kind of thing. So to me, it's the kind of thing I support. I don't think the government should discriminate people based off of their personal medical choices. I think private individuals, private businesses should generally have the right in terms of who they want to associate with. That to me is a core principle of voluntary association. I haven't been to a single place that I've never been asked, going out to eat or things like that. I've literally never been asked. You don't see very many places requiring masks. You do see the sign that says, please wear a mask if you're not vaccinated. Like I saw that at the comic book store in town. I've seen that at a couple of places. Of course, again, they're not checking, so it's silly. I mean, I think some of it is, there is, look, it's not like there is no one in the state of New Hampshire that still has these beliefs. And so particularly if your clientele is more, it's strange that this became affiliated with progressivism. It's not necessarily what I would have predicted, sort of a priori, but, businesses that have more of a progressive clientele who want to kind of signal to them that this is a safe space, you'll see signs that hint at it or suggest it. You actually see it even more, actually, I find at the larger stores. So if you go into, say, like, Five Guys or something, at the chains, they're more encouraging than, like if I go into the sort of local restaurants and stuff, I don't really see the signs.
But is the culture in Manchester, is it getting better?
I think it's getting better. It did surge a little bit. We just went through our wave in the Northeast. So like we just had a case peak in like late December into January. And I did see an uptick in mask wearing then, but we're over that peak. Like, and I don't see people wearing them I don't see people wearing them in the streets. If you go into the grocery store, it's definitely not going to be zero as to the percent. Maybe it's 10 to 20%. that would be wearing masks. So it's not zero.
Yeah. So where I am, I'm in Northern Illinois, as I mentioned. The city of Chicago and Cook County, the county that Chicago is in, they both instituted vaccine requirements for any indoor public space, essentially, minus grocery stores or whatever. And a whole bunch of other towns in the area have also proposed that. There's a town near me. It's called St. Charles. Really nice town. I like it a lot. But they proposed that, and they had a public inquiry period. And I was kind of surprised that it was shot down 100 to 1, literally 100 to 1. They got, I think, 200 messages against and 2 in favor.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to gauge where people are at, because you have Chicago, which is, not that far away, where you can't go anywhere, without your medicine passport. And this video is going to get demonetized anyway, so I don't know why I'm trying.
Well, the YouTube actually only inspects the first 5 minutes for live streams, so you're outside
Really?
the danger window.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
I believe that this is secondhand. I haven't done firsthand dive into this, so I'm repeating something that someone else told me. But he's a reasonably credible person, so I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's like a dig at him. I didn't mean to say that. Reasonably credible. He's a good guy. I trust him. Yeah.
Okay, so Manchester's getting better. Part of the reason I asked this is I have considered moving to New Hampshire. At Pork Fest, which is where we originally met, everyone's trying to get you to move to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And to me, I listened to you talk about it a little bit. You made the best case for it.
Thank you.
So if I were to move to New Hampshire, probably it would be the Manchester area. I'd want to live closer to civilization rather than, out in the middle of nowhere. So that's why I have some, I guess I have some curiosities about Manchester in particular.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about whatever. And yeah, free staters, we're like Libertarian Jehovah's Witnesses, so we don't stop, we can't stop talking about it. It's we're like CrossFitters and vegans. How do you know someone's a free stater? They'll tell you.
You guys have to start just you should just knock on my door. Have you invited New Hampshire into your heart?
We would if we could. I will say one other thing just about the COVID stuff, because I went through this. Like, one is there's a density of people here regardless. A lot of it's free staters, but not exclusively. Like, we were talking about Ultimate Frisbee right before the show started, going all the way back to November 2020, when basically all of the country was still gripped in this, no matter where you live to some degree. I was still able to have an Ultimate Frisbee league. I still played Ultimate Frisbee indoors in a winter league, and most players weren't wearing masks, and still people were willing to go and play indoor sports. This was still happening at a time when the paranoia and the concern was quite high. And the network generally of libertarians here meant that if it was your personal choice, and by the way, I'm not a COVID skeptic. I think particularly pre-vaccine, it made sense for a certain class of people to have a heightened sense of concern for themselves. So that's my personal opinion. But that's what libertarianism is, about making your own personal choices and associating with other people who share those personal choices. So we had people in April of 2020 still having the in-person get-togethers. My kids throughout, Free State Project held Pork Fest in summer of 2020, not 2021. We met in 2021. We held Pork Fest in summer of 2020 when everything was canceled. My kids continue to play with other kids, mostly in libertarian circles that didn't like the stuff, so the kids could play outdoors, had peer groups that weren't crazy. Again, my personal subjective definition of crazy, you might think I'm crazy, of course. But so I just wanted to say that that's like a big part of it. That's difficult. People like to look at the policies and all this stuff of various states, but a big part of it is the network and the power of having this network of, I think it's over 10,000 people, though the official number is like 6,500 or something. And that's very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm going to touch on that as well, like free state specific stuff. But I do have a very specific question here.
Let's talk Manchester.
Which is, do you think on net, the Bostonians that are moving into Manchester, like we all know this is happening, like en masse, do you think that's a net positive? Is that a net negative, or is it about, does it just net out?
So I think certainly since COVID, it has been tremendously positive. Where the people who are coming here, I'm not going to say that they're all libertarians, but they are predominantly people who are frustrated with the COVID status quo of their state, and a lot of them from the Northeast, where we're seeing people come in not just from Massachusetts but from surrounding states. I actually think the narrative in general about Massachusetts specifically sort of infecting New Hampshire is somewhat wrong. I've seen some political people share some stats with me about the sort of southern wall. There's a sort of southern border around the counties that's actually getting more red, where it's Massachusetts people frustrated with gun laws or whatever hopping over the border, and that's been something that's been going on for 10 years, and that it's actually more sort of liberal coastal elite types moving upstate and moving to other places, to the Lakes region and so on, that has been the sort of negative influence. Specifically in the last year, in 2021, New Hampshire's net population increased by around 10,000 people. The actual amount of new people is around 15,000 because we had 5,000 more deaths than births. Of that 15,000, it was something like 5 to 10% Democrat, 35% independent, and the remainder Republicans, like 55% Republican. And now, of course, libertarians are not Republicans. So the other very important number is that the Free Stater account increased by 1,000 people last year, which is crazy. It's our best year to date. And so the libertarian concentration aspect is also accelerating. So I think that the overall demographics are getting better. The libertarian concentration is certainly increasing. And you can see this in the policy victories and the outcomes that are happening in New Hampshire.
Okay, so I think, libertarians are not Republicans. However, it's easier for libertarians to exist in a more Republican-leaning state than a Democrat-leaning state.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. But I think that when you see conservative or Republican, and those are different words. I'm more sympathetic to conservatives than Republicans. When you see Republicans, because you can be a conservative and a libertarian, and you can be a liberal and a libertarian. You can be those things. Libertarianism is agnostic on a lot of these, or intends to be agnostic on a lot of these. Some of these social debates to its good or to its detriment. That is the position it takes. You see, I think, policies that are quite bad when you get, whether it's policing, policing of social values, policies that are extremely pro-cop, pro-government, so I agree with you. I'm not look, if I'm generically picking an R or a D, I'm picking an R, right? There's no doubt about that. And we see that in the state. The Republicans have welcomed the Free Staters basically with open arms. Sununu just went to a Cato event with the founder of the Free State Project. They're on stage together talking about how great New Hampshire is, and the Democrats continue to try to malign us as far-right extremists. So there's a clear difference, and they even tweet about stuff like, "Oh, holding my nose, I'm working with a Free Stater," and it's like, dude, Democrats, Free Staters agree with you on 20% of things. We want to decriminalize sex work, decriminalize drugs. The Free Staters just partnered with the Democrats to say that police couldn't give information to ICE, and this is an area where Free Staters broke. The Free State wing of the Republican Party broke with the rest of the Republicans to work with the Democrats to restrict ICE's ability to operate within the state. And so, but they can't do it, so the Democrats are much more, I do think the Democrats tend to be more anti-liberty and the Republicans more sympathetic. Absolutely.
So building on that, if you look at a voting heat map between 2016 and 2020, New Hampshire got significantly more blue.
Not in state elections. So
that's okay. You got me.
Okay. So, and this is the tricky thing about New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is stepping back in time politically. So there's a large wing, even with the libertarian streak. And you saw this actually with libertarians outside of New Hampshire. New Hampshire has this odd, to me, it's odd, or quaint maybe is a better word for it. But they really believe in the political process where, we're supposed to have respectful debate, and this kind of thing. And these people hated Trump. They hated him. Even if they potentially agreed with him on certain issues, they hated the way he conducted himself. Okay. And the amount of split tickets in 2020 that split Biden and Sununu, the governor I just mentioned, was incredible. Sununu won the 2020 governor election with something like 67% of the vote. And you can, if you want to look it up real quick, feel free. But it was he killed it. And Republicans control the entire state government of New Hampshire. They control the governor, they control the House, they control the Senate, and there's also this weird extra body that other states don't have called the Executive Council, which actually has the ability to override the governor. And this is also entirely Republican. So it's all Republicans up and down the state government. And this all happened in 2020 at the same time in which the state elected win for Biden. And so I think we'll have to see what happens in 2024. But I definitely think there was a substantial contingent of people who would have typically voted Republican who really didn't like Trump.
Okay. So part of me that kind of implies to me that like a culture of faith in the political process that I think is detrimental to the Free State Project. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I think you've been involved in that movement a lot longer than I have, and you've been aware of it a lot longer than I have. Why was New Hampshire chosen as the state?
So this does predate my involvement. So I can recall some of this history, but none of it is firsthand for me. The Free State Project was something I was aware of from a very early time, but I wasn't really like paying attention to the day-to-day of it. But my understanding is that after they reached, it started with an announcement from Jason Sorens, which you can go back and read. It's quite interesting. In fact, the opening paragraph is I think, incredibly insightful. That's not the right word. It's a good prediction, but there's a more eloquent word I'm seeking. And he basically says, there's no way that libertarians are going to win. I bet that 20 years from now, all of these things won't happen. And we just hit the 20-year or about to hit. Man, I think we already hit it. The 20-year from this initial announcement. And he was completely right that there's no chance that the libertarian agenda is going to get enacted. But he said there's enough libertarians that we could win if we concentrate ourselves. And this is what kicked off the whole thing. And this being the early 2000s, they started a mailing list for interesting people, and they started having people sign up for who was interested. And they basically started with this compact, an assurance contract, basically a Kickstarter. If enough people agree, we'll do this thing. When they reached 5,000, they said, okay, it's time. They said they had 5,000 people agree to move without even deciding on what state. They said, we're all going to move where we decide. When they reached 5,000, they kicked off this process of debating and deciding on states. The states that were strongly considered, well, I know the top three order of the finish was New Hampshire, Wyoming, Alaska. They were looking for states with a low enough population that it was feasible, with a natural libertarian streak in the native population, were two of the biggest ones. And then there were other concerns. One of the big ones, I don't know enough about the history of whether this was a strong consideration, but I'll tell you it's been incredibly beneficial in the way that it's played out, is New Hampshire has very small districts. New Hampshire's legislature is something like the second or third largest in the world, including all state governments. We have a house of over 400 people for a population of 1.3 million. And this means that the districts are very small. It's very feasible for a single candidate to knock on every door of everyone in their district and have a conversation with them. And this is where that faith in the process is not necessarily such a bad thing, because look, libertarians are more likely to win when people are actually willing to have a conversation and consider ideas. Right. And so if the New Hampshire voter, New Hampshire is also a very intelligent state, highest IQ or second highest IQ state in the country. And you're able to go door to door. Second highest. Yeah, but it's like by 100.
Actually wins by like 0.1.
We haven't updated that stat since all the free states.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So I got to say, I think we're winning now. Completely unfounded claim, but I'm a shill. Anyway, it's worked. And again, the amount of free staters has gone up and up and up to now it's something like 45 in the state house. The House majority leader is a free stater. As I mentioned earlier about the governor associating, we are clearly a very meaningful political and powerful political bloc in this country, to a degree that in no other state do libertarians have this amount of influence. Republicans can't win without us. The Republicans, nothing can get done without us. And the Democrats can get stuff done if we work with us. So we're in this sweet spot where we have more power by being in the middle. and obviously we're at the extreme on some issues, but we're in the middle in terms of these power blocks. So I think it's the strategy worked quite well in this regard. I think I got a little bit off topic from your question about the early days, but they went through this. Some people started moving. They continued to get people to sign up for the compact. The move was triggered a little over 5 years ago. Turns out a lot of people did not move. I don't think that's like that surprising. But it's clear that like this movement has got a lot of legs, more legs than it honestly ever has had in its history. The rate of people moving and expressing interest is 2021 was a record high for us, lifetime project history. So this is something that's definitely accelerating.
Okay. I mean, now that it's started, I don't think that we should stop it or change it. But I do wonder, why not Wyoming? Wyoming's population is what, a third of New Hampshire's, and I visited Wyoming in 2020, in summer of 2020, and let me tell you, there was no COVID in Wyoming.
Yeah. So fsp.org/history has some of the history. I couldn't recall off the top of my head like what people's thought process was. Obviously, Wyoming came in second, so plenty of people supported it. I mean, I don't know if I would have moved to Wyoming. Maybe I would have. I probably would have waited longer. Like, I mean, like you said, you basically said, I don't want to live too far from a city. I mean, it's a lot harder in Wyoming than here. You know, I'm a tech guy, I'm a startup guy. Like for me, it's like, oh, I'm in the Boston suburbs, you know, like,
Right.
so for me, like, you know, I'm not there are plenty of libertarians here. Like, I want to get, 10 acres. I want a homestead. I want to live in the woods or whatever. And obviously the state supports that kind of life. But there are also a lot of libertarians who, want to have the amenities that cities have. And I'm able to, I think more on that side. Although as I get older and have more kids, I will say I get less that way. But certainly when I was younger, I was even more that way. And you're able to get that here too.
Okay, so you don't have to answer this question if you don't know the answer, but I was wondering, New Hampshire does have the coast. So was it a factor in choosing New Hampshire? Like, look, we're going to secede one day, and we're going to need access to the sea.
That was absolutely a topic. As to how much that weighed on everyone's mind in deciding it, I don't know, but absolutely that was a topic. And look, we just had another example of how things are accelerating. We just had a state rep introduce a bill, a free stater, introduce a bill for New Hampshire to secede. 8 others to become an independent nation. 8 other state reps joined him. Now, that's not going to get through this year. We're realistic. But, we're absolutely kind of shifting the Overton window. And this is a lot of the way, like, if you look at how, culture got more and more progressive, or how the government got larger and larger, I think libertarians are like about 90% opposed to most of the progressive agenda, maybe more. It was basically by these people, like, they continued to be anchors and they pulled people to their positions more and more, and they didn't stop. And they were a very vocal minority, and they continued to say these things, right? And we're really playing this out in reverse. The same way that these things happen, we're doing the same things. We're refusing to, we're being very strong in what we believe. We're refusing to back down, and we're bringing more people to our side, year after year. A decade ago, free staters were more quiet about being it. It was a more controversial thing. And now it's something like there's no hesitation. No one cares. Oh, you're a free stater? Some people might think you're a little bit quirky. There's a small minority that does actively dislike you, but it's a small minority because you have to be pretty politically keyed in to get mad at people in that regard. It's a small minority. Most people, the amount that the average sort of New Hampshire resident knows that we're here, they just think we're a little bit quirky, and some of them, a lot of them, have come onto our side, right? Obviously, if these people are getting elected, many of which openly run is like, yeah, I'm a free stater. I moved here because of the Free State Project. They're getting 50-60% of the vote. So it's not something that's, it's something that's become really normalized. And this is, I'll note, like the way that other civil rights type stuff has gone up, has happened. Libertarians are, this is one of my more unpopular beliefs at times with libertarians, but I really do view us as an oppressed minority. We have beliefs that we sincerely hold. We are not allowed to live our lives that way. But they're very sincerely held beliefs, and we're not trying to dominate others. We're saying, can we have any space on earth where we're allowed to live this way? And basically the rest of the world is saying no, right? And so we're going through that same playbook that other oppressed minorities have gone through, where we're saying like, look, this is who we are. We believe these things, and we're normalizing ourselves within the community because they see, oh, you know what? They do have these beliefs that I think are a little bit weird, but look, he's a good guy. He's a good neighbor. You know, he has kids that are fun to play with. You know, he's a really reasonable guy. He's a nice guy. And so that instead of thinking of you as this other category, when people are othered, it's much easier to dislike them and hate them. You become more adjacent to them and not an other. And I think that's what we're going through here, and that's part of how we're winning.
All right. So, man, I'd love to talk about that for hours, but I want to shift gears.
Yeah.
So you're the CEO of LBRY, right?
Yes,
LBRY?
that's right. Yeah.
I don't understand how it works.
That's
and I really want to understand how it works.
Yeah.
So
Are you in
give me
computer
the dumb
science?
guy explanation?
Yeah. Are you in computer science, or is your audience?
So yeah, I actually, for a long time, I've considered myself a technology enthusiast. I ran a computer services company for like 7 years, but I'm not a computer scientist. I don't know how to program. Like, I know some of the terms, but like,
totally.
Yeah, where I'm at is adjacent to that, but like, I don't get it.
Okay. So when I say that LBRY does the publishing, what Bitcoin does the money, what I mean is we've created an open source technology that allows people to create and share information online that leaves them in much more control than you would get with the big tech platform. So you can own your identity the same way that you can own Bitcoin. That is, no one can reach in and take your identity away, this kind of thing. So how does it work? You take a public proof of work blockchain, which is what Bitcoin is, and you create a transaction type that basically allows a declaration of an identity. You create another transaction type where those identities can insert metadata into the blockchain. And metadata is data about data. So it's the things like the title of something that you've published, the date that it was originally created, tags, right? This kind of thing. So the metadata gets written to the blockchain. Inside of that metadata is a pointer to a more traditional peer-to-peer data network. And so that would be technologies like BitTorrent is something that might come to mind when you hear a phrase like that. And so we already had technology for accessing information online that was censorship resistant, like BitTorrent is. But the biggest problems with this technology were, one, discovery, figuring out what was on it. And then two, incentives. And very related to this is payment and legitimacy. So BitTorrent is elegant technologically. It's terrible for content creators in the sense that content creators refuse to use it for the most part, not exclusively. Of course, some do. But really legitimate content creators weren't using it. And with LBRY, by adding identity and payment mechanisms, it's gotten a lot of usage by legitimate content creators. And wait, I think I got off track and just started talking about where we are as a business. I can bring it back to technologically what it is. I mean, that's really it. I don't mean to say that it's simple, but it's not the most complicated thing in the world. You take a public blockchain, you modify some of the things you can do with it. You're using it to store metadata and identity, and then you're stapling that to a peer-to-peer data network.
Okay, so I guess I got to figure out what my question is.
Yeah.
So Odysee is also a platform that you run. It's a video platform.
So I tried, the distinction I make here is that LBRY is a protocol and Odysee is a platform. So Odysee, ODYSEE.com is the way that most people use it. Is used by like 40 million people last month. And you can load it up. Anyone here listening can go on there. I believe they can follow you on Odysee.
Correct.
Right?
Techno Guy 3.
Yeah, it's very easy to use. It's very easy to get accustomed to. It doesn't feel that different from YouTube, quite frankly. And it's a layer on top. So sort of like you've got this underlying LBRY network that's like Bitcoin. You've got an easy way of using it. So it's kind of like Coinbase or another one of these websites where, like, yes, when you're using Odysee, we have custody of your keys, right? That's the nature of using a centralized service. Odysee is a centralized service. Odysee interacts with the LBRY network on your behalf, but it's much more user-friendly than the desktop app. So we also have a desktop app, which is the sort of power user app, fully peer-to-peer. If you're the kind of person who's like, I don't trust anyone owning my keys, I don't want anyone to touch them, Your LBRY desktop is the client for you. Odysee has some more bells and whistles and is more user friendly.
Okay, so if I upload a video to Odysee, does that go onto an Odysee controlled server?
Yes, it also gets published to the LBRY network generally. So like anyone who's watching it, they're also hosting and seeding it. Or also if people just follow you, they also are helping host and seed that content.
On Odysee?
On LBRY.
Okay. So if I'm running the LBRY desktop program,
you're participating in the network.
Okay. So if I follow somebody, I'm seeding their videos?
Yeah, so there's like a disk space setting where you can set how much disk space you want to allow the app to use, and then that space is used preferentially toward any content you explicitly watch. Is going to get used, and then if it's not all used up, it will also just help host content of people that you follow, with the idea that you would rather use your disk space to go towards the content creators that you like and support.
Okay, and is there an incentive built in to incentivize me to do more of that?
Kind of, but not really. No, you're not going to really earn anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the LBRY tokens?
The LBRY tokens are used to pay content creators. They're used to, you have to use a small amount when you publish or create an identity. Although Odysee will give you enough for free to create an identity and to do a decent number of publishes. You'll also earn as you create content and so on. So as long as your content's getting some engagement, you won't generally have to put money in. But that's what the tokens are used for. And then there's also a staking system where the tokens can be used to stake or support content that you like.
Okay. In the staking system, what is the concept behind that? Why does it exist?
So two reasons. We use the staking system to resolve disputes or competitions or over handles. We also call this owning the vanity name or owning the community name. So we use like basically the naming system on LBRY is similar to Discord, if people are familiar with that, or a lot of video games have this naming system where basically no handle is exclusive. So two different people can get the handle TechnoGuy3 on Discord, and then there'll be like, your TechnoGuy3 hashtag AB4, right?
Yeah.
And so we use that same kind of system. If someone queries the system and says, well, what if I want to look up Techno Guy with no additional scope, then that's resolved by which of the handles has the most staked. But you can also stake on others. So that's not just your money or your cryptocurrency. Anyone in the community can stake.
So I would theoretically, these tokens have a market value. There are exchanges where you can buy them, right?
Correct. But I want to be very clear with that like this is not a system in which you can ever lose your identity. The identity that you made is always yours forever. So when you create, in fact, and we use the minimal amount of scope required. So if you created the first TechnoGuy3 handle, you're going to be TechnoGuy3 :1 or :A. It's going to be just one additional identifier. That's yours forever. Okay. If there was ever some competition, if multiple people said, no, I'm actually TechnoGuy3, then, or wanted that handle, then TechnoGuy3 with no resolution would be resolved by the staking system. Staking is also used for trending calculations, and it's a weight in the search algorithms as well.
Okay, so so I guess there are LBRY token miners, right?
Correct. Yeah, they're specialized devices sold by Gold Shell for people who want to get a miner. And you can, of course, also you can buy hash power from mining pools and things like this.
Okay, and these miners would do the work in putting that metadata on the blockchain?
Miners, it's same as Bitcoin, so they are confirming transactions and securing the blockchain.
Okay. So why is it, my question is, why is it designed so that the people hosting the content aren't incentivized to do that? Just the people there's just people incentivized to put the metadata on the blockchain.
So the reason I hemmed on that is a little bit is there actually is code that's there to do that. We ship all clients configured to be set the pricing to 0 because for a variety of reasons that I could get into if you're particularly interested. But basically, the key fact is that all the clients are shipping at 0 and it's not really changed. So basically, you're crowded out. So you're not going to realistically earn anything.
But if LBRY got big enough, then you would, right?
If LBRY got big enough, also the thing is Odysee is also hosting people that are using Odysee. Odysee participates in the network too at 0 for everyone, for all content that's hosted by Odysee. Now Odysee doesn't host all content. So for example, Odysee won't host adult content, right? So Odysee does not participate in the data network for adult content. So there is some content that Odysee is not hosting, but especially for anything Odysee is hosting, Odysee is also participating at 0.
Does Odysee make money?
Yes. Yeah. Well, in the sense that it generates revenue. Is it cash flow positive? That's a different question. But
where does the revenue come from?
From advertisements, as well as from there's credit card based tipping. So you can tip in cryptocurrency or with fiat, and on the fiat tipping, a cut is taken, 5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you tip with cryptocurrency, it doesn't take a cut.
It does not take a cut.
Okay.
That might change though. So don't. I mean, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not announcing some big news here, but I can't promise that one lasts forever either.
Okay. So the advertisements. Do you have like pre-roll ads, or what are the advertisements?
Yeah, there's pre-roll.
Okay. And is there any way
pre-roll or mid-roll? Yeah.
Okay. Is there like an Odysee Premium where I can buy my way out of the ads?
Coming out very soon. Coming out like it's February, right? Yeah, I think in February. I think it's. I don't know. I'm not. So I don't. I want to be. I didn't say this earlier. So the current structure is the LBRY owns Odysee. I've gotten hands off from Odysee. We've set up a different company. It's being run by a guy named Julian Chandra. 2/3 of the people that were previous at LBRY are now at Odysee. So Odysee is going full speed ahead. Odysee is just competing in the social video space. Odysee will always use LBRY as its underlying system, but Odysee is being encouraged to go full speed ahead, compete with YouTube, get as much of that market share as it can. Odysee does not have a decentralization mandate, right? So Odysee can, if Odysee wants to do things in a centralized way, it can, so long as it's still using the LBRY system underneath for content delivery and for identity. LBRY is now focused on expanding the protocol itself, as well as the development of new apps, so that this identity that you have on Odysee can be taken into other places, and the LBRY protocol can be used for other places. And there are some third-party apps already, but we want to see some third-party apps with millions of monthly users, the same way that Odysee does.
Okay, so if I upload a video to Odysee, it's at least the metadata for that video is recorded on a blockchain, on the LBRY blockchain, right?
Correct. And you can also exit Odysee. You can take your wallet with you, and then it's, you're back in decentralized land and it's yours.
Okay, so if I do that, if I upload something to Odysee, if I take my wallet with me, Odysee would have no way of removing that video from wherever it is.
Yes, Odysee can't remove things from LBRY, generally speaking. I guess it could if it got a legal order and it has custody of the wallet. Then it could. But generally, that's not something that Odysee does. For the most part, if Odysee is told that something is illegal, it just blacklists it. So it just doesn't return the end results and doesn't show it on the site, and it doesn't remove it from the network.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right. Yeah, my main concern with LBRY is I just didn't understand what the incentive structure was.
Yeah.
For hosting content, but it sounds like that is built in. So if the LBRY network got big enough and the demand was there, then
let's also remember BitTorrent works with no incentive.
Yeah. Okay, but it just seems like YouTube is a very expensive platform to run.
Right.
So
It is.
and that's why it's not really competed with up till recently.
Right, but these web-based versions have the ability, like, because they can do ads, they can do other things, like, and all the code is there, right? That's another important thing to talk about in terms of checks on us becoming the bad guy, which may be driving some of the. So I imagine there's two questions, which is sort of like sustainability, and then also what happens if we become the bad guy, right? And one of the checks on us becoming the bad guy is also that all the code is open source. Well, almost all the code. Some of the Odysee backend, like authentication system and so on, is not. But basically, the vast majority of the code is open source. So if Odysee did become evil, it's not that challenging. Could one individual do it in a week? Probably not. But could someone else step in? Like, imagine if someone could create a YouTube if like. I don't know what tech company I can name that people would trust. I don't know if Elon Musk wanted to. Do we trust him? Who do we trust?
I mean, more than most.
Yeah, but the point is, like, if someone that we trusted, wanted to create a competitor with YouTube, and like, imagine if you could do that, and like all the content was still there, and all the handles were still there, it would be far easier to compete. Right, you wouldn't have to start from nothing. You would still be able to leverage a lot of the market effect, the network effects, and so the same phenomenon exists here.
Is Odysee planning on making mobile apps?
Yes, it has one on iOS, and the Android one is in testing. I believe if you like opt into, I believe there's an APK you can download directly, and it has been. We've been. I don't think it would have been fully released anyway, but we've been fighting with Google on getting Odysee into the pre-release, like where you opt into beta testing, whatever. I forget the words exactly what that program is called, but Google has been fighting letting Odysee into the store for 4 months.
Okay, and how do you? It's on iOS now.
It's on iOS now.
Okay, how do you not get censored?
So Odysee is willing to compromise a little bit if it has to. This is the sort of the difference between Odysee and LBRY. LBRY is very uncompromising, right? So if there was ever LBRY apps that they said remove, we say remove it, and we'd switch to the pure APK based distribution model or equivalent on iOS, which I'm not even sure what that is off the top of my head. I think it's very challenging on iOS to do third-party app distribution. Odysee, and I'll give an example, and I'm not proud of this, okay, but like Odysee is trying to compete in a real way, and that means that Odysee needs to be in the app stores. I think what they do, and maybe at some point we'd release like alternative APKs, and there could be different versions, but like Apple was very upset with some of the COVID content that was in Odysee. And what we ended up doing was altering the search results on iOS devices only. We actually didn't pull any of the videos. So if you went to them directly, you could still get them. But it was clear that in their testing, they were typing COVID or coronavirus into search. And if they saw content about ivermectin or whatever they were being ninnies about, they were going to not let the app into the store. And so we had to say, like, this search is not allowed on iOS. We put up a message to get the app into the store. And like, I'm not proud of that. This isn't me bragging. I think it's disgusting that what they're doing. But like, if the choice is it's on iOS and you block a search term, or it's not on iOS, like, I mean, get off iOS in my opinion. Like, yeah, I think I'm not a Google shill, but like, and there's at least Android. There's alternative Android operating systems you can use. And even if you're on Android proper, at least on Android, you can download a third-party APK, and it's not that challenging. I can just click it and install it. There's alternative app stores, all this stuff. On iOS, you're just trapped, as it seems like to me. I'm not an expert, so if you are, feel free to rebut that. Or and if someone's listening, they're like, "No, Jeremy, you're wrong." Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on iOS, but that's my impression.
Okay, so right now, if I download I have an iPhone here.
Yeah.
If I download the Odysee app and I type in ivermectin into the Odysee app, does it just say?
It'll work. Yeah, Apple's dialed down. I actually, the COVID thing may have even been removed. I'm speaking to events that happened more than a year ago, or around a year ago. And Apple, I do think has dialed this back a little bit.
Is there any support for like Roku or Chromecast?
There is a Roku app. It's actually made by a community member, so it's an unofficial app. It's a little bit raw, but it's getting better all the time. And I actually haven't checked out the Roku app in about 3 months, so it's probably quite a bit better from the last time I checked out it because he was working pretty hard on it. That's the only other platform that it's on, but it will probably be on more this year. And I will say, if you're an engineer who's like, I'm an expert at bringing apps to whatever, I'm not. Dude, I hook a laptop up to my TV. Like I have nothing. So I don't even, this is why we have an Odysee CEO. Like I'm too much of like a Linux guy, like get this stuff away from me. Like, so I had to get someone who could commercialize this a little bit. And that's why I'm focusing on LBRY, being more purist, because that's my orientation, but I want to be successful. Right. And so there's a way to do this. I think that like kind of hits it on both notes. And also, I also think by being accessible, even if a little bit compromised, you end up, you can do it in a way that's like, hey, Apple didn't let us show this to you. And you end up red pilling more people anyway, by doing things that way.
If it actually, like, if that was the response, you put up a message on the screen that said, essentially, Apple's not allowing us to show you this. Like that's going to red pill a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I like the honesty of that rather than just shadow banning it or, Okay. So, I'm a big YouTube guy. I've been a big YouTube guy since I was a kid. I started making YouTube videos when I was like 12. And most of those people can go and see, they're awful. But I've been using YouTube pretty much every day since I was 12. I'm 27 now. So it's been like 15 years. Of YouTube, whatever that is. I started using YouTube like basically when it first started, whatever year that was, 2006 or something like that. And like almost every day I'm watching YouTube videos. I Chromecast them from the YouTube app. So I'm wondering, is the Odysee app going to get something like that?
Yeah, I would think almost certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would really
I think the iOS one already lets you cast. I think the iOS one lets you cast. And I would be, again, I'm not like literally following the day to day, but like, what's the point of a video app on Android if it doesn't let you cast? I'm sure, even if that's not there on day one, like that's obviously going to be a feature that's going to get added. I mean, there's no question about it.
Great. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would love to just switch over everything to Odysee, but like I'm so deep in the YouTube ecosystem that it's rough.
Well, our recommendation is like look, if you are a committed enough in your beliefs that you can go cold turkey, I commend you. I think you're an incredibly respectable person. I think if you're not all the way there, the answer is switch where you can. Like, so there's like a browser plugin that will it's called Watch on Odysee, that will redirect you. So if you literally you can use the YouTube front end, and if you click on a video that's on Odysee, it redirects you so you're watching it on Odysee. That's a great way where, hey, at least when I don't have, at least I can watch it on Odysee when I can. I think that's a great way to do it. Or you say, you know what? I watch Tim Pool every night or whoever. I'm going to always watch that creator on Odysee, right? And that's a great way of like beginning. It lets you get familiar with this new piece of software, although I don't think it's that hard to learn. You're developing what's effectively a new habit that's contrary to this 15-year habit that you've developed, right? Which takes time. And so I think that a great way to do it is to do it a little bit gradually. Again, you can go cold turkey. You're awesome. But if you can't, then do it gradually.
All right. So you're running for U.S. Senate.
Yes, I am. Yeah, as a libertarian candidate, I think it's important that the Libertarian Party, sort of run committed libertarians, which I very much am. And I think if there's any state, that deserves to be represented by a libertarian, it's the state of New Hampshire. I think it's a little hard to win as a libertarian, but I'm confident I'm going to make some noise and hopefully cause some positive change out of the campaign, one way or another.
Okay, so yeah, that's my question. My question is why? And I've heard from people close to the campaign, at least on Twitter, that you're trying to win.
Yeah. Well,
and what exactly does that mean? Does winning mean you're actually elected to U.S. Senate?
That's one way to win. And I certainly I'm taking the campaign seriously. Like we will do some like stunts and jokey stuff too, because I think when you're a third party, that's what you have to do. Like I certainly think that like I deserve to win. I think every rational person in the state of New Hampshire should vote for me. I think that a lot of people are in a duopoly mindset, so maybe it's going to be a challenge to reach some of those people, though we have some creative ideas. But like I think it's important that New Hampshire have an unequivocal voice for libertarianism. And I want to say, because this is getting political, and I try to separate my work, because like all the app stuff, like you don't have to be a libertarian to like the idea of like not letting these big tech companies mess with you. But like, I'm a libertarian. A lot of libertarians are way more prescriptivist than I am. And what I mean by that is like they regard their political stances as like objectively correct, and you ought to abide them, and you're wrong or bad. But I'm not saying this is you at all, but like my libertarian perspective is like, it's just the way that I want to live, right? I believe in it very sincerely. And, I would like to, I'd move to some, 10 square mile island in the middle of the Pacific if it was a libertarian nation, So that's the way I want to live my life. And I think that New Hampshire is becoming a more and more libertarian state. It's going to eventually become the libertarian homeland, of the whole world, right? So people don't like it if you call it libertarian Israel, but you kind of get the point. We're not gonna treat Gaza the same way or whatever. But the
Massachusetts, are you sure?
I mean, it is a good question, right? Because like that's the point. Is like, look, it's a large world. And I think people of all different kinds of political persuasions, I think if you're a socialist, I think if you're a communist, I think these people get screwed over too. I think if they had their way, it would be a dystopian place by my moral preferences, right? But look, you had CHOP. People wanted to live there. I would never want to live in CHOP, but some people seem to like it. That's that anarchist or left anarchist, whatever you want to call it, city in Seattle. And it's like, I wish more people would take this view that it's like, hey man, it's a large world. We don't have to agree. Like, let's sort ourselves out more. Let the libertarians live with the libertarians. Let the communists live with the communists. And let's see, man, look, if communism created a utopia, maybe I'd become a communist, right? Like, let's be a little more open-minded about what works and what doesn't. And we can be skeptical. But like, if people want to put skin in the game and live a different way, I like to be supportive of it. And so that's definitely, I want to be putting some messages and ideas out there. I also want to make sure that like we don't let a fake libertarian win. Some of the Republicans think that they can just count on the free state vote, and I don't think it should, or the free state support, and I don't think things should work that way either.
Why aren't you running as a Republican?
I want to be on the libertarian ticket. Like I think that there's a big opportunity here to do some things on the libertarian ticket. I think that it will also be an opportunity to engage and interact with other libertarians, and I want to be going around doing that.
Okay. Is there anything specifically where it's like, if I ran as a Republican, I couldn't do this thing that I want to do as a libertarian?
I don't know that much specifically about running, as I've never run for office before. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire approached me and said, like, we want to go all in on one race and we want it to be you for Senate. And I took some time to think about it, talked over with my family, like really considered it. And I was like, why not? Like, it's going to be someone, right? Like someone's going to run, right? It's not like there's not going to be a libertarian running for Senate. And I think if I do it, that there's a lot, like, I think I can do better, than a lot of other people would. And I think that also I can cause some real positive change, which I would call winning, both for the state of New Hampshire in terms of how things are thought about politically, as well as for the free state movement, which is my top. Like, the truth is, I don't think libertarians can win without concentrating. It's my firmest belief, right? And so that is part of the reason I want to run, is so that I can continue to put that idea out there. It's not the only reason I'm running, but that is a big part of it.
Okay, but honest, blunt answer, do you think that you would have a better chance of winning the race if you were running as a Republican than as a libertarian?
Yeah, of course. I think, okay. I mean, any libertarian who says they have as good of a chance to win as a libertarian, I mean, they're like, and this is what I actually had this in my, when they asked me about running, I had this in my feedback. I was like, I always feel like when libertarians say that they have as good of a chance as winning, I'm like, I always feel like they're lying to me. I was like, so do I have to go around saying that too? And they're like, no, you don't have to say that. So I was like, okay, that was one of my caveats. So like, look, I'm running to win. And I think that what I actually urge for people in New Hampshire is like, when you take a poll, say you'll vote for me. And if we get to 10% in the polls, let's take it more seriously, right? And I'm not saying I'm taking it seriously in my approach to it, but in terms of like conceiving, but do I have the attitude that it's possible? Of course I do. I have the attitude, right? I'm taking on Google and I'm at the same percentage, right? I'm at 30 million, 40 million. Well, guess what? They're at a billion. What's the percentage of 40 million of a billion? It's 4%, right? It's that same kind of distance. But these distances are closable over time. I mean, they are. Small minorities upset incumbents. I do think it's actually even harder in the political domain than it is in the sort of business domain. But it is possible even in the political domain. And if there's a state that it's going to happen in, it's going to be here.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, just in terms of political strategy, how to maximize the amount of difference that you can make. It might be running as a libertarian, because if all of the free state people and a lot of the liberty-oriented Republicans all say they're going to vote for you, you can get a lot of concessions out of the other candidates.
Absolutely, right. And look, I'll say this right now. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it's my belief. I haven't gone over this in my campaign. If whoever wins the Republican ticket for Senate, because it's not known yet here, so they're still got to go through a primary. If they get on stage and say, "I'm a free stater, and I believe the things that free staters believe," I'll jump out of the race. All right. So like, that's definitely part of the play here, is that like, by being that, Taleb has this concept of the most intolerant wins. I don't know if you know Taleb, if you like Taleb or not, but it's this idea that like a minority that's extremely intolerant can actually get the entire majority to go along with them. And an example of this is like how a bunch of foods are kosher. And I don't mean to say that people that want kosher food are intolerant. Like, I don't mean intolerant like bad people or something, right? But in the sense that like a minority that is extremely strong and says, no, we demand this, like a lot of times they get their way, because it's the only way, like, because you need that minority. And so or why give up? What's the cost of getting that minority? What do you give up, et cetera? And so a lot of times you get your way. And so I think I want free staters to be doing the same thing. Like, if the Republicans, Republicans should not take free stater vote for granted. For granted. That's funny. But yeah, they shouldn't take it for granted. And this is also, that's certainly another reason to do this, is to help show that.
Yeah, if you care about your thing 100 times more than the majority of the population, then you can get your thing through, because they're not going to fight it as strongly as you are.
Yeah. I've got to run in like 5 or so minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
That's a very good question. I got a list. So let me just figure out. Here's a quick question you can answer. Are regime libertarian CIA?
No, they're not. I actually wish I gave a keynote speech at the Libertarian Party convention here that, like, I mean, it's probably going to remain heated through the LP convention, because there's these two sides that are just like really vicious towards each other. But at least in New Hampshire, like, one of those sides has won, and like, we need to bring people who are on the other side like back into the fold. Like, our enemy is the state, as far as I'm concerned. Like, there's so much fighting among people that, like, at the end of the day, we agree. We agree with the regime libertarians like way more than we do, with some of these other people. And it would be nice if both sides could recognize that more.
Great. Got time for one more question?
Yeah, one more. Give it a final question.
So it seems I'm a really conservative guy in many ways. It seems to me that in New Hampshire, family values are somewhat lacking. And you can just look at the fertility rate. I feel like this is the case up and down the East Coast, but especially in New England. People just don't have kids.
Yeah.
And it's just not a strongly held value that you would want to have kids, or that you would want to raise kids well. So my question is, in the free state universe, are family values lacking?
Dude, I'd say absolutely not, man. Like there are so many free staters with kids. And to me, it's the strongest one of the strongest reasons, if not the strongest. For me personally, it was at the top of my list of reasons to come. I'm a nerd. I nerd out on everything, and so I was doing all this research on what affects the outcomes of your kids, and of course, your parents and genetics affected a lot, and of course, the way that you um, raise them in your house and the way that you treat them, and do you love them, do you show them care, do you teach them various things? Of course all this stuff matters, but one of the things I found that was shockingly impactful, not that I would have thought it didn't have any impact, but according to the research, I'm not saying I endorse this conclusion, but this is what the research says. The research says that the environment, the social environment, not the household, the community with which you raise your kids is more important than the way that you treat your kids inside of your own household. So the largest choice, according to what these people say, the largest choice of the way of the impact that I have on my kids, because of course the genetics are kind of set, my genes aren't changing, is the community that I embed my children within, and that's of course my choice. And here, my children are embedded within a community that really shares my values, and there's an incredible amount of parents. There are play dates, there are play groups. I mean, my kids are hanging out with other libertarian kids. It's 80% of their play dates are with other libertarian. My kids are all quite young, are with other libertarian kids, and we see large families move all of the time. There's a family who moved last month with 6 kids. In fact, there was a Catholic family who moved like 2 months ago with 7 kids. So. Yeah, there's even a saying, "Breed 'em for freedom," that free staters say from time to time. So I would say it's a very, very pro-natal environment. I think that whether it's socially conservative, where libertarians have a liberal to conservative spectrum, I think you're going to get a mix. Speaking for myself, like I do not identify as a social conservative. I'm very sympathetic to social conservative perspectives because I think they're like effectively marginalized. And I don't like that, but they're not my personal preferences.
Okay. And if I move to the free state, do you think I would have no problem finding other people who share my values?
No, I don't think that would be a problem at all. I think that's like the number one, like one of the biggest things that you get. Yeah.
Okay.
I do recommend as a man bringing a libertarian woman with you, or turning a non-libertarian into one.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a great, libertarians tend to have very strong political beliefs. Because they're willing to kind of go against the grain to find these things that they believe. Most people aren't. This is another reason the Free State Project works. Actually, is like people that have political preferences that actually have them are not generally very persuadable. Right? Like you can't really argue people with strong you can't really argue a socialist into being a libertarian for the most part. Occasionally it happens, but for the most part it doesn't. But what it turns out is like 90% of people, 80% of people don't have them at all. Like in the sense that like they basically conform with society, they go along to get along. And so if those people were embedded in a communist society, they would embrace communist values. And if those people were embedded in a libertarian society, they would embrace libertarian values. And so, like, there's a lot of, especially for like libertarian men. This can come out the wrong way. So I'm trying to say this like in a sensitive way, but like, the person you date may just become a libertarian because they like you and they don't care that much. And so, like, rather than like, grilling someone to see if they share your political beliefs, like, it may be as much about like, could this person share your political beliefs in the future? Are they that kind of person, or do they have, really strongly held beliefs?
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. My personal question is, are you an atheist who also is against abortion? If the answer is yes, I'm going to put a ring on it.
I am. I'm very skeptical. Like I have never seen a persuasive reason to have a positive belief in God. So I guess that basically makes me an atheist. I am abortion. I'm complicated. I'm morally okay. Like it's very difficult for me to find the morning after pill morally offensive. It just doesn't trigger me. When a child is like actually that child could be born, it does feel morally wrong to me to have an abortion. At the same time, I would not like I'm basically an ANCAP, right? So to me, it's not also like, is something wrong, but like would you pay for it to be enforced on your neighbor?
Yeah.
Right. And so like I would pay to not have my neighbors murdering each other. Right. I don't think I would pay, like it's wrong, but I wouldn't. I don't know if I, so that's like, I don't know.
There's definitely a lot of people who would pay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are, right. And
win.
I'm like, my answer on this one is like, I'm just staying out. Like, I wouldn't do it. Right. I would absolutely no chance would I have an abortion if a baby was like literally viable. I find that morally wrong. I probably would just let the two sides fight it out and like go along with which is maybe the most disgusting moral answer to both camps. But that's I'm being honest. You got to say I'm being honest. So
does the market value of the complete baby outweigh the market value of the baby parts?
I will say for these anti-abortion camps, like, and I'm obviously had that like economic logical thinking that can make some people morally uncomfortable at times, but like, that's the number one thing. If you're saying, you know what, I want to see, I'm pro-natal and I'm very pro-natal. I want there to be more people in the world. I think that's a moral good for people to have children. And I think that the number one thing, if you allowed economic exchanges here, you would see way more children being born. We would increase the number of children. We would reduce the number of abortions. Now, this makes people very morally uncomfortable to have this conversation. So I don't typically bring this idea up, but since you kind of brought it up, like, yeah, like to me, it's a net, it's win-win. Now, of course, that this is the thing about a lot of our moral beliefs is that they're not just about outcomes, and they're actually frequently kind of backdoor urge to dominate others. And so that's why we see an urge to hire police to go around and stop something from happening rather than to find a sort of mutually agreed transaction that would stop it from happening. So,
all right. And with that, I think we'll end it here. So thanks everybody for joining. Thank you so much for coming on, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me on.
Jeremy4nh.com.
Jeremy4nh.com, Odysee.com, create an account, sign up, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Kauffman.
All right. Thanks so much.